Her original name was Faustina Mary Fatima Rani. She belonged to the Pariyar community from Puthupatti, which is in Madras state. A man's voice was heard. At some distant corner, there was a man who was speaking, and everybody's heads were hung in understanding who is it that who is speaking, and they were all listening to him. Mothers had taught that among our people, in their culture, short hair is worn by mourners who are mourning over a death or loss of somebody. Hello and a very warm welcome to your prep school English classes. I'm your English teacher, Kshama. In this session today, we are going to take up yet another chapter from your supplementary textbook named as Memories of the Childhood. Now, whose memories from the childhood are we talking about? All the memories from the childhood are always sweet. But this one over here is a documentation of, I would say, bitter memories of the childhood. How these two girls over here bring out two different, yet that run on the parallel lines, their experience of the childhood. Let's understand. We have in this session today about the author. We are going to talk about there are two different stories incorporated within this one whole chapter, which is called as the Memories of Childhood. The first one is called as Cutting Off My Long Hair, and the second one is called as We Too Are Human Beings. Given to you by two different writers. It is not fictitious. It is a non-fiction biographical piece. Now we're going to talk about the background, the summary, and the recap. What's important for you is not just to understand the story and just only that bit of it. You have to understand why do you have that story, right? So the first one is, the first author that we have is Zitkala Sa, who is a Yankton, Dakota writer. She belongs to this tribal group, okay? And she's the editor, translator, musician, educator, and political activist, what not, right? So she's also known by her anglicized and married name, Gertrude Simmons Bonin. Now in this session or in this chapter, we get to know her, address her as Simmons. Then wrote several works chronicling her struggles that we talked. Now we come to the important point. Here we are talking about her struggles of what? Her cultural identity and the pull between the majority culture in which she was educated, the Dakota culture into which she was born and raised. Now you get to know that what is this thing that we are talking about. It's about the marginalization or pushing these minority culture, which is the Dakota culture or cultural identity that she's born into, and the one where she is being educated, the one where she is like forcefully actually taken into with the umbrella term or the purpose of education. She was told that she'll be educated. There is this culture where she was educated, and there is this primitive or you can say minority culture of Dakota tribe that she's born into. There is a pull between these two. There's a struggle that she has gone through. If you say you belong to this majority culture, they say no, you belong to the Dakota culture. Then when you say you belong to the Dakota culture, there also people say you truly don't belong here. So how is this diaspora or you can say the pull? How does she deal with it? What are the struggles that she went through? Now, her later books were among the first works to bring traditional Native American stories to widespread white English-speaking readership. Now, one of the first few works were her works that brought about the traditional Native Americans, these that were in, minority groups, that those who were less in number, their culture was not predominant. The predominant one was the one which was of the majority people, which was accepted and practiced by majority people, right? So those stories reached the white English-speaking people or readers through her stories. Let's get to know more about her before we go to the chapter straight away. It is about her struggle, and it's just to only know the bit of it and ignore the entire background will be a sin, I would say, because you have to get to know about it, right? So she was also the co-founder of National Council of American Indians in 1926, which was established to lobby for Native people's right to United States citizenship and other civil rights they had long been denied. This particular council over here, National Council of American Indians, American Indian, which is the native traditional people, minority people, it was set up, why? In order to voice out their needs and rights to what? To the United States citizenship, in order to get their rights. In order to make their voices be heard, this council was important, and she was one of the co-founders, right? She served as the council's president until her death in 1938. Till then, she was a president also of this particular council. Then noted as one of the most influential Native American activists of 20th century. Later on, working with American musician William F. Hanson, Zitkalasa wrote the libretto and songs for the Sundance Opera in 1913. She was also a musician, editor, as we get to know, not just a political activist. Then, first American Indian opera. This was it, the Sundance Opera, and she wrote for it. So that's what we get to know about our writer, about our author, about one's whose struggle that we talked about. It's none other than Zitkalasa, or also known as Simmons. Let's get to know Simmons and her struggle later on. The second story that we have is by another one, and I'm not going to spoil it for you. She is somebody that we can also relate to. This one is a foreigner, but her struggles also make us relate to it and understand it. If not relate and empathize with it, understand it at least. Then let's get to know more about her. So, Yankton Indian Reservation in South Dakota. There, in the reservation, she was raised by her mother, actually, Yankton Indian Reservation, which was situated in South Dakota. Her mother's name is Ellen Simmons. Her father was a Frenchman, but he abandoned her and all the family, and he went away. Then, she was 8-year-old and she was all happy before she was taken away from her mother, okay, by the missionaries that came saying that we will educate you. The missionaries came over there and they took her away from the reservation. Then what happened? Taken to be educated at the White's Indiana Manual Labor Institute. She was taken to that institution by the missionaries, and it was a missionary boarding school. Then when she tells us in this extract the experience that she's having, it's her first day in this White's Indiana Manual Labor Institute. She's expressing whatever that is happening over there, her first day, which is not so sweet, right? So the missionary boarding school founded by Josiah White, the education of poor children, white and colored and Indian. So it was with the purpose, according to them, for the education of white children, all the other colored children and Indian children. Indian, not just us. There are also other parts that are known as Indian, okay? Or of the traditional American people were also known as Indian. So it's referring to them and all the other colored people as well, which also includes us, right? All the whites and everybody. Now that's for their education. It was set up, and she was also taken away at how many years old? She was only 8, and she was having a great time with her mother. She was taken away. Then for 3 years, she was in that school. Later on, the school days of an Indian girl, she has documented that in a book. The school days of an Indian girl, supported by her friend, encouraged by her friend. She said, you have to document your experiences in a book. And she did so. Then she, recorded her deep misery, the heritage, how it was stripped away from him. So every individual has a backdrop, has a culture that he beholds, right? Now, how does it, how does make one feel when the majority, or it is stripped away by you, by another culture, by another dominant culture? She documented all the miseries about it. So you have to pray a different God, you have to cut a traditionally long hair. So your belief system, the culture that you are raised into, it is very personal. It forms the crux or core of an individual's personality. Now, if all of that is taken away from you, you can't speak the language that you were, speaking or raised speaking, the thought process of your language, your mother tongue, or you have to cut your traditionally long hair according to your tradition. It was a common thing to have a long hair. Here in this lesson, we see how her long hair is cut, okay? And she has to pray another God, right? How is it that, how much of a misery is that? Then, contrast of joy in learning to read. On the contrary, when one would think that, okay, she might not be able to read or enjoy studies when she has been taken away from her mother. On the contrary, she actually enjoyed learning to read, write, and play the violin as well. Okay, she decided to make most of it when the opportunity was given. Then, returned to Yankton Reservation to live with her mother. After 3 years, however, she returned to live with her mother, but she did not find that, attachment, that belongingness. She was away for so many years. Now to get in touch back again with this Yankton Dakota tribe was very difficult. She felt like she was out of place, although it was her own homeland, right? Although longed doesn't fully belong. So that's the concept of diaspora. that we talk about. Then in the reservation, conforming to the dominant white culture, she had a problem with the fact that it's not just studying that we have to do in the missionary or in the reservation, the missionary that we are studying into. Everywhere, not even the reservation, they are following the white dominant culture. It is true that even us, for that matter, we feel that, incorporating or embracing our own culture, we feel insecure about it. Whereas that is what should be the case in all the places. We should be happy and proud about our own culture. But on the contrary, we feel very insecure, following our own cultures. So how is it that our author over here also had a problem with it? She says, even the reservation is abiding by or conforming to the dominant white culture. Then, education, after education, when she was 15, she studied piano, returned and everything. She started teaching music at White's and she was also awarded her diploma. Then, she also wrote speeches on inequality of women's rights. She was highly praised by the local newspaper as well. So you get to know that she is somebody who vocalized how much of there is a struggle between conforming to this dominant culture of the whites that she does not belong to. Yet when she tries to come back home and be, adopt to her own culture, they are also in turn trying to be how the whites are, which most of the world is actually trying to westernize themselves, who we're looking up to the West and everything. That does not mean you be open to all the cultures. That does not mean you put your own culture down. You feel less of being who you are, right? So that's what it is about. And the second author that we are going to deal with it's very important. That's why I'm giving you much more detailed information about these two women, these two authors, these two belonging to very different backgrounds and telling us stories that are much necessary to be heard. Right? So the other one that we have is Bama. Bama is the pen name of Tamil Dalit writer known as, she's from a Roman Catholic family, okay? And she published 3 main works. An autobiography which is named as Karukku. So in 1992, it came out, the autobiography, and Sangati in 1994, a collection of short stories and Kisumbukaran in 1996. Then it is an excerpt, the one chapter that we are going to study about is an excerpt from the autobiography Karukku, published in 1992, okay? It actually means Pamera, which are leaves that are like double-edged swords, and it also contains the word Karu, okay? In order to decipher the meaning, to find out the etymology, which means embryo or seed, okay? So it refers to the freshness and the newness as well. Then her full name is Bama Faustina Susairaj, who is a feminist. She's a teacher and a novelist. Okay, let's call her as Bama, who is a feminist, who is a novelist, as well as a teacher by profession. We get to know one more thing about her. She is a Tamil Dalit writer. Tamil Dalit writer, again, belonging to a minority group in the Indian context. In our context, we got to know one case from the foreign context and another case in the Dalit scenario. It is not something that we are blinded towards. It's not something that we don't know about. It is an issue that everybody knows about, the issue of untouchability that existed in India and took a lot of years to just faint away and made a lot of people suffer in various degrees, right? So she's a Tamil Dalit writer telling us the stories of how the Dalit people were treated. Now let's get to know, that's the novel that she has written, where she explains all those things, Karukku. Then she documents the joys and sorrows and experiences by the Dalit people, Dalit Christian women, particularly Dalit Christian women in Tamil Nadu. Then has written 20 short stories. So her original name was Faustina Mary Fatima Rani. She belonged to the Pariyar community from Puthupatti, which is in Madras state. Then her father was working in Indian Army and her brother was a famous Dalit writer. Who is it? It's Raj Gautaman. Now you know where the influence also comes from. Her father is in the Indian Army. Her brother is one of the famous Tamil Dalit writer known as, his name is Raj Gautaman. Okay. Now, what is it that she documents in Karukku? Or what is it that we get to know in this story? What has she documented? Let's understand. Now, her grandfather actually converted from Hinduism to Christianity, and the ancestors actually belonged to Dalit community. Okay, originally. They all worked as agriculture laborers, and her early education happened in village and her literary influences were Tamil writers such as Jayakantan, Akhilan, Mani and Parthasarathi. These were the prominent writers who were a great influence on her literary career. Okay. Then in college, she read and enjoyed Kahlil Gibran and Rabindranath Tagore. I mean, these two names, it's not possible that you have missed out on these two. Kahlil Gibran, I'm sure you have heard On Children by Kahlil Gibran, and Rabindranath Tagore, who doesn't know him, right? Now, she became a school teacher of poor girls and served as a nun for 7 years. And after joining the nunnery, she found out that there was a separate training center for Dalit Catholics. She understood how these people are separated from the majority, okay? And this angered, what angered her? The condition of the Dalit Catholic Training Center, and she left the nunnery. She got to know that there is a huge difference between the normal training center, okay, and the Dalit training center that was separated from the regular training center. She could not bear this difference. Later on, she became a teacher at a Catholic Christian school and found out that the Catholic nuns oppressed the Dalit children and teachers. So wherever she was going and finding a job, she understood that the Dalit children belonging to these minority group, the people were being racist, people were, treating them very differently. The facilities that were provided to them, the treatment that was provided to them was very different. The Christian Catholic nuns, they were actually oppressing, and they did not behave well, they did not give opportunities, facilities to who? To the Dalit children and the teachers for that matter. Okay. So she began writing, encouraged by one of the friend, and wrote on her childhood experiences. So critically acclaimed and won the Crossword Book Award in 2000. And whatever that she has written, it has also been in the various textbooks like marginal literature, literature in translation, autobiography, feminist literature, subaltern literature, and Dalit literature. All of this have a part of what she has written as their text. Now, we also have her story in her text. It is such an honor to have her text in our textbook, isn't it? Now, across many universities, people study about the experiences that she has documented. Then Bama got a loan and she set up a school only for Dalit children in Uttira Merur, and she, decided to do it. She decided now that they are being oppressed, the teachers, Dalit children and everything are being, treated like these outcasts. This cannot happen for long run. She did not only write about it, but also decided to set up a school all by herself. Moving forward, now we come to the first story, which is the cutting of my long hair. Now we are here to check out or to understand Simone's first day. Okay, we got to know, what did we got to know? That she was 8-year-old when she was taken away from her mother. To where? She was taken away by the missionaries. To which school? To the manual labor, White's Indiana Manual Labor Institution. Now we are going over there and trying to understand how was her first day in school. Like, first day in school should be good, right? It must be wonderful. Being over there, getting to study, getting an opportunity to educate herself will be a wonderful opportunity. But was that so? Let's understand. The first day in land of apples. What's the land of apples? State of Washington. She has come to Washington and it was bitter and cold. Not a good experience. Let's understand what's the experience. Large bell rang for breakfast. Then undercurrent of many voices, she could hear murmuring of the voices. It's a boarding school, as we all know, and boarding schools experiences might not be that good most of the time. So my spirit tore itself, struggling for lost freedom, and all was useless. She was taken away from the hometown and her mother, where she actually belonged, and she was brought to this foreign land where she does not know anyone, does not know anything. So her spirit was low. She was not feeling that good about all these things, and that her freedom was taken away from her. To any human being, the greatest thing that you could do is to, when you snatch away the freedom to do anything by themselves, we will completely lose ourselves when we are taken away or when we are deprived of freedom, right? Then there was a pale-faced woman with white hair and who was looking after everybody. She was probably the in charge or somebody who looked after these girls. Then there was a line of girls who were marching into the dining room. All of them were started marching into the dining room. It was a time to have breakfast, as we understand. These were all Indian girls, the native traditional Indian American girls. Stiff shoes and closely clinging dresses. Moccasins, which is the shoes that they wear, which does not make any noise. And she had a sinking feeling She saw all these girls marching in one line, you have to move like this. And then they are wearing some uncomfortable dresses over here, which according to her, in her culture, people don't wear such dresses. So she was pretty uncomfortable as well with the dresses. Then immodestly dressed, according to her and her culture that she grew up in, the dresses that they were wearing, according to her, was immodest. And it was tightly fitting, hence. Then the boys entered. She could see that the first row, or the first few boys, there were 3 boys. She looked at them. They were also marching in line. And then the small bell tapped. She thought probably the pupils are supposed to sit down. So all the pupils actually drew their chair. And she thought she has to be seated. So she did. But when she looks around, it's just that she is seated. Nobody else is seated. So only one who is seated. So she decided to rise, thinking that, oh no, I'm not supposed to stand. Then another bell rang. And all of a sudden, everybody sat. So she was about to embarrass herself again, but then she sat down. Now, a man's voice was heard. At some distant corner, there was a man who was speaking, and everybody's heads were hung in understanding who is speaking, and they were all listening to him. So it blocked the view to her. She was not able to see who was talking. Then glanced a long chain of tables and caught the eyes of there was a pale-faced woman. She was actually looking straight towards this girl. So this girl actually becomes very much conscious that somebody is looking over towards me. Then immediately she dropped her eyes and wondered, why is this woman, pale-faced woman, looking so intently, so keenly towards me? Then man mutterings, there was a man whose voice were heard. It stopped. Later on, the 3rd bell was tapped. That is where. So for this person who, was eating, was on her own will and was free, now you have to do everything according to the system. Stand up when the bell rings, sit down when the bell rings, eat when the bell rings. It is all too much for this girl all of a sudden. After that, they are using the knife and fork and they began eating. But she actually began to cry instead. It was not okay for her. She was completely feeling out of place. And eating by the formula for that day when she started out, that's not the hardest thing that she had to do. But what was the hardest thing that she had to do? Her friend Judwin, she had given her a terrible warning. Judwin is somebody who could understand a couple of words in English, and she had heard other pale-faced white women talking, that she knew a few words in English, and she had overheard people talking about cutting of the long hair. They had decided to cut the long hair of all these girls. Long, heavy hair. But what did Simmons think about it? Mothers had taught that among our people, in their culture, short hair is worn by mourners who are mourning over a death or loss of somebody. Or shingled hair, these small cut hairs, are worn by cowards, those without courage, braveness, right? We have to submit because they are strong, says Judwin. One of the friends tells her that, we don't have a choice, we have to submit. Then, no, I will not submit, I will struggle first. You see that this girl over here is very brave and very much rooted with her culture. She says, no, at least I'll struggle and thrive before I submit. She says, so what does she do about it? When nobody notices her, she goes and hides herself inside a room. So I disappeared into an open door. It was large. All the windows were shut. Curtains were closed. 3 white beds. Windows were covered. And there were dark green curtains. The room was dim. She goes and hides herself there. Then what happens? None of them were there, so she crawled under the bed. But then what happened? Whenever she heard the voices, fear creeped into her. Later on, hall was filled with loud voices of probably Judwin was also calling out her name, but then she did not answer. When she did not answer, people started looking for her all over the place. She stooped. People stooped and finally looked under the bed. There she was. It was not some impossible place where it was difficult to find her, right? So she was dragged out. And although she started kicking and, tried to resist and everything, this girl started to scratch wildly. Even after all that, her struggle, it was all fruitless. It all went in vain. When she was carried downstairs, tied fast to a chair. Think about it. Is she an animal? Even to animals, you shouldn't be doing that. It is against her will. She doesn't want to get her hair cut. That's her individuality. Let her be. No. Okay, although she cried aloud, she shook her head all the while until she felt the cold blades of the scissors against her neck. And she heard the cutting of her thick braids. She had thick braids. It was cut. Only until then she could shake her head, cry and everything. Now that the scissors are up until your neck, why will you even cry? Why will you even dare to cry and think of all those things? I lost my spirit. Of course, anybody would do, anybody in her place would do. Since taken from mother, she had suffered a lot of extreme indignities. People had stared at her. Not just that, she was tossed about like a wooden puppet. As though she was a wooden puppet, she was tossed from one place to other place. She was pushed all over the places. Her long hair was shingled like a coward's. And whenever she called for her mother, just how she would come and comfort her. Now there was nobody to even, sit with her, comfort her, to give her reasons as to why something is happening. One of the many little animals, just like the many animals that are there, I was just one of them now, driven by a herder. So her individuality, she also lost her individuality of who she was, her uniqueness and everything, and became one of the many animals over there. Okay, that's the story of Simmons or Zitkala as we read it and understand it. That was a very, very horrible story. Or if I were to add first day being that bitter cold, it can be definitely, it is appropriate to call it bitter cold. Then we have the story of Bama. Okay, so she was studying in 3rd class and she hadn't heard of the word untouchability, although it was being practiced in the places that she lived. They had the Pariyar community people had different places or the gullies or the narrow lanes that were provided to them only for them to enter and live. No other people would come over there. They were not allowed to go to any other lanes and everything. But she gives us an example of one of the circumstances when she experienced or when she saw untouchability being, performed, being, practiced by people. Then she had already seen, felt and experienced it and been humiliated by what it was. Rather than hearing the word, she had experienced it and seen people experience it. Then one fine day, she was walking from home and the distance was about 10 minutes, but she took about 30 minutes, looking around everything, appreciating everything and losing herself throughout the way. She would take 30 minutes to reach home. And there was a performing monkey. What was there? Let's list. The performing monkey, snake charmer was there, and then Mariatta temple, where there was a huge bell. There were people cooking pongal. You see that the setup of the Tamil culture coming up. There was dried fish stall by the statue of Gandhi and sweet stall selling of fried snacks. And there was also the Narikuravan hunter with his gypsy, who was a gypsy, with his lemur in cages. These many things, who wouldn't take 30 minutes to reach home if there are these many things to look at, right? Then there were political parties who would have arrived here. They would have put up a stage and they would have started to do their rantings, random speeches, prolonged speeches. And sometimes they also had street plays, a puppet show, or no magic, no logic, no miracle show as well, as she calls it. Then there was the, there were people who were cooling the coffees with the help of the tumbler, keeping the tumbler high up. Some people chopping onion, and there was almond tree fruit down, dropping by the wind. So this is the scenario that she's walking into. I mean, it's so much wonderful. It's so much colorful, filled with a variety of things. It feels like we have entered into a fair ourselves. So this is the background that she has to pass through in order to reach her house. But along with all these things, let's come to the point where she talks about what is happening. What is it that she saw that day? There was not just that. There were mango, cucumber, sugarcane, sweet potato, palm shoots, gram, palm syrup, palm fruit, guavas, jackfruit, all of these things. The list just goes on and on and on. Okay. So there were sweet and savory fried snacks, payasam, halwa, boiled tamarind seeds, ice lollies, everything. Then when she came to her street, you understand that, right? In the opposite corner, the landlord watched the proceedings. There was the landlord, or the one who is called as the landlord of the village. That person was sitting opposite to their lane. He's in the opposite corner, not in their lane. Okay. Then our people were hard at work driving the cattle in pairs. These people, our people, when she says she's addressing the people of her Pariyar community, those people are, hard at work. They're driving the cattle in pairs. They're doing all the work. The landlord is just sitting, observing all the proceedings. Then what happens? Then she sees an elderly people and an elderly person of her community, okay, from her street, their street. He came and he's walking in the manner, it made her almost burst into or crack up and laugh, okay. So he was a big man carrying a small packet in his hand. Okay? In that fashion, it was weird. He was holding the packet like this, as though he was barely touching it, and it almost made her laugh. There might have been something inside it. There might be a vade or something. Vade is, you have seen a vade. For Indian people, it's not something new. It's a South Indian dish. Okay? Then vade might have been there. Vade or a bhaji might have been there inside the banana leaf that was tied inside the banana leaf. Now that this person is holding it like this, what if it just falls? That's what she thinks about. She's in 3rd standard. Okay? So it was wrapped inside the banana paper and then wrapped inside the banana leaves and then wrapped inside the paper. So it was stained with oil. That's how she could make out either it is vade or bhaji. Okay. Then holding out the packet by its string without barely touching it, he is holding it by the string. Won't it come undone and the vades fall out? That's what she thought about. When he went straight to the landlord, bowed very low to him and extended the packet, cupping his hands, he actually extended the packet straight away to the landlord, bowed very low to him. And the landlord just opened the parcel and he began to eat. Then I went home and told all of this to the elder brother, her elder brother. Who is that? We know him, it's Gautaman. Then she told the story to him and she told it in a very comical manner. To her, who is, she's in 3rd standard, to her it is comical, it was funny to her. But then it's her brother who actually opens up the true reality of the situation in front of her and tells her that Annan was not amused by the way I explained it to him. My brother, older brother, was not really amused by it. What did he say? Now, everybody believed that they were the upper caste. The upper caste people believed or felt entitled and therefore must not touch us. They thought that it was inappropriate, it was sinful to touch these lower class people. So there's a class difference. Okay? Then if they did, they would be polluted. According to them, they were all clean and pure. And if only they touch, that's the practice of untouchability. If they're, keeping them away and treating them as outcasts. If only they touch us, they think that the upper caste people, they get polluted. Then this actually made Bama very angry. She was provoked. She was now furious. And she said, I really wanted to touch those wretched vades and I just wanted to make them all polluted. If that's what they think about themselves, them being so entitled and us being what? Dirty and filthy, that's not okay. She was not okay with it. Why fetch then? Can you not fetch it for yourself then? You want us to fetch it for you. But we cannot touch it properly or hold it properly because it will get you polluted. Then fetch it by yourself, right? Important elders of ours are fetching it for you. She thought about that. Meekly to the shops to fetch the snacks and hands it over to them. Now, you want us to do all the hard work and everything. But when it comes to acknowledging it, you don't want to do it. Okay, you don't want us to be next to you. This fellow sits there and stuffs them into his mouth. She becomes furious. All that this guy gets to do is sit there and just gulp it. Right? She got infuriated. Later on, let's see what happened after that. How did they think so much about themselves? How did they think that they are so entitled, so above? They are also humans. We are also humans. How is it that they are so superior, right? Scraped 4 coins together and lose all human feelings. Is it just because they have money? They can just throw coins at us and that they have no human feelings? Is it how it is? Our people should never run these petty errands for these fellows. She thinks our people shouldn't do work for them. That's what they want, right? They only get work done from us. I don't want our people to work from them. Work in their fields, take home our wages and leave it at that. It's okay. We work for them. They give us wages. That should be at that. We shouldn't be doing all of their work. If that is what they think, if they think we are dirty, we are polluted, then they should not make us do all the other works as well. The elder brother says, who is studying at the university, he has come for holidays and he says he also goes to one of the other instances we get to know. He also goes to the libraries to borrow books. And one time he had an encounter with the landlord's men where they asked him, behind him, Annan looked unfamiliar. He actually studies at the university in the city, right? So he has come for the holidays to his house. So he was a little unfamiliar. And one of the landlords, he asked, who are you? What is your name? Where are you from? And everything. So he asked, who are you? Who are you, Appa? What is your name? Then to which he answered, he told his name and everything. Tambi, on which street do you live? Brother, which street do you live in? Why is this question being asked? It is being asked to understand which caste does he belong to. right? Whether he is an upper caste, whether he is a lower caste. In order to understand that, this question is being asked. Why do you need that? A name isn't enough to identify a person. Why do you want which street they live in? Do you want to judge them? Do you want to decide on, how should this man be treated only based on what community they were born in? That's not fair, isn't it? Then, Annan he told her something very important that she made it a purpose of her life, I would say. So, because we are born into this community, we are never given any honor of dignity or respect. We are stripped off of all of that. But if we study and make progress, we can throw away all these indignities. So study with a lot of care, learn as much as you can, learn everything. And if you're always ahead in your lessons, people will come to you of their own accord and attach themselves to you and work hard and learn. So now the brother might have also told, you also, he might have taught, there was a possibility, he could have done it. He could have told her, you are supposed to hate these people and all of those things. But he said, education is how you can destroy all these barriers and make people be one, united, right? Education only has the power to, be avoid of, take away all these prejudice or stereotypical taboos and everything. All of these can be stripped off only by a strongest tool, which is education. That's what her brother teaches her. He also tells her, this actually made a very deep impression on her, and she studied hard. He also tells her how people also used to treat him similarly when he was young. But as he started progressing with his studies and everything, people also became closer to him, irrespective of the fact that which caste, which community he belonged to. So she started coming first class and many people became my friends. So both brother and sister, they were very good at studies, they were very good with their academics, and also eventually went on to make friends with a lot of people, irrespective of the fact that it will be there somewhere or the other, people judging people on the basis of the caste as well. But it is in our hands to not use it as a criteria to judge people, to treat people differently. People don't deserve to be treated like that based on the prejudice and everything that we have, to which community they belong to where they live. It doesn't matter as long as they are good people. Our only criteria to judge people should be whether they are doing good deeds or not. That's it, and nothing else. So I hope you enjoyed all these two stories. Read the stories and the background to these stories as well. Appreciate the theme that is given in the story and inculcate it in your lives as well. So on that note, I'll see you all in the next class. Thank you.